A lot of people are confused about some of Paul's plain statements in the book of Romans. In Romans, Paul elucidates what God does in a person's heart, pointing out that lost people can't save themselves from sin, but that God will do that work in a life. It's in the context of discussing what happens when a person surrenders to Jesus, when someone is dead to sin but alive to God, when someone has been baptized, that Paul makes this liberating statement. Romans 6:14, "For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under law, but under grace." When you die to sin, sin doesn't have dominion over you, and you're not under the law. When you surrender your life to God, sin doesn't have dominion over you. It isn't your master, and you're not under the law. What's the end result of living outside of God's law? Well, the very same writer writes later in the very same chapter that the wages of sin is death. So when you're living a life surrendered to sin, you're under the law. You're under the penalty that comes along with that. You don't want to be under the law. Now, is Paul saying that you don't have to obey the law? No, of course he's not. Obedience to God is the inevitable result of loving God. It's what happens when Jesus lives his life in you. So what is it then to be under grace? Does being under grace mean that you don't need to or want to obey God? No, we both know better than that. Paul says that a sinner who turns to God is under grace, forgiven, and living in the power of God. And should sin appear in the life, there is grace for that sin, and not simply the penalty for having broken God's law. When you're repentant, surrendered, living a life of love for God, you are under not the law, you are under grace. And that is good news. I'm John Bradshaw for It Is Written. Let's live today by every word.